How is it that engineers are able to tackle huge technical problems? Are they just geniuses? Is it a superpower? Maybe, but one thing that's for sure is that engineers have some important tools in their tool belts that help them solve problems. One of those tools is called the engineering design process. What's a design process? Well, it's a systematic problem-solving strategy with criteria and constraints used to develop many possible solutions to solve a problem, or to satisfy human needs and wants, and to narrow down the possible solutions to one final choice. Huh? What this really means is that a design process is a set of steps that someone can follow to understand a problem and come up with a solution. If you opened up 50 different books about design, you would probably find 50 different diagrams of a design process. They look a little different on the surface, with different numbers of steps and different names for each step, but they all describe the same process. Each one is a guide to help someone reach a solution to a problem. You use a problem-solving process like this every day without realizing it. Each time you have to pick out an outfit, prepare a meal, or even plan your route across a room, your brain goes through a problem-solving process similar to these. You gather the relevant information, you think of your options, you make a choice based on what you think will work best, and you put your plan into action. This works well for simple day-to-day problems, but for engineers and designers facing big problems in the real world, they have to use a design process a little more formally. Whichever design process you use, it will have multiple steps presented in a specific order. A design process is methodical, meaning that it's a carefully planned roadmap. Trying to get to the outcome you want by simply winging it is sort of the opposite of design. Design processes like the one we are studying today are used to invent new technology. They're also used to innovate or improve upon existing technology. Also, every design process is meant to be iterative, meaning that the steps can be repeated over and over as many times as needed until we achieve the best possible outcome. It's a lot like trial and error, except that the improvements aren't made by happy accident. They're made by careful examination of past failures and by purposely implementing a thoughtful new approach. This is the design process we're going to explore in depth. It has 6 steps between the problem and solution. Along the way, we'll see what an engineer does at each step to help bring new technology to life. The first step to solving a problem is to define the problem. This is not always as easy as it sounds. To solve a problem adequately, first you have to really understand the problem. Who are the stakeholders or the people affected by the problem? Is the problem valid? Do solutions already exist? Is the problem justifiable, or is it worth solving? What are the requirements of the design? How will success be measured? And what are our limitations? Let's clarify some terms before moving on. A stakeholder is an individual, group, or organization who may be affected by or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity, or outcome of a project. A criteria is a means of judging or a condition upon which something can be evaluated. A constraint is a limitation, restriction, or requirement on a design solution. At each step in the design process, it's important to understand what actions the designer is doing at that step. During step 1, the designer is thinking critically about the problem and trying to see it from every angle. They're trying to understand the requirements and limitations of any potential solutions they might come up with. They're listening carefully to all stakeholders to find out what is important to them. And finally, the designer writes a design brief. This is a document that outlines the important details of a design challenge. Let's take a look at an example. This is a blank template for a design brief that you might use to organize a project. Let's take a closer look. A client is a person or group who hires designers and engineers to take on projects. The target consumer is the person or people who will use the product or system designed by the engineer, and the designers are the individuals involved in carrying out the design process. Any design brief includes a problem statement. This is the simplest possible definition of the problem. A good problem statement is concise, leaves room for multiple creative solutions, and doesn't suggest any one solution yet. It should answer questions such as, who has the problem? What exactly is the problem? Where does the problem exist? When has it happened, and for how long? How prevalent is the problem? Getting the problem statement right is an important first step towards designing a solution. It helps the designers focus their efforts right from the start, and helps to refocus the design process if it gets off track. A design statement is a little different than a problem statement. This statement describes the anticipated design effort to address the needs of the stakeholders and the problem statement. In short, the design statement explains what you aim to do and deliver as part of your solution to the problem. As mentioned previously, the criteria of a project is how the success of a solution will be measured and evaluated. For example, important criteria to consider when comparing two solutions might be safety, aesthetics, ergonomics, simplicity, or cost. Constraints are the limitations or requirements of a design. Every project has constraints. Sometimes a solution must be delivered in a limited amount of time or under a limited budget. The design brief should articulate all known constraints, such as limits on cost, size, or weight, functional requirements, materials, or any others. Taking the time to carefully complete a design brief forces the designer to think everything through. It's a way of thinking ahead and avoiding problems before they happen, a theme that will continue throughout the design process. To better understand the design process, it helps to see how it's used by professionals. In 1999, ABC's Nightline released a special called The Deep Dive, which focused on the product development firm IDEO. The IDEO team was challenged to show off their design process by redesigning a familiar item that everyone can relate to, the shopping cart. This segment takes a look at how the IDEO team approaches the project, and we'll see how they tackle the task of defining the problem. Later, we'll follow the team's progress as they work through the other steps of the design process.
9 in the morning, day one, and these people have a deadline to meet.
So welcome to the kickoff of the shopping cart project.
This is Palo Alto, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley, and these are designers at IDEO, probably the most influential product development firm in the world. IDEO has designed everything from high-tech medical equipment to the 25-foot mechanical whale in the movie Free Willy and the first computer mouse for Apple. Smith ski goggles, Nike sunglasses, NEC computer screens. Hundreds of products we take for granted.
The point is that we're not actually experts at any given area. You know, we're kind of experts on the process of how you design stuff. So we don't care if you give us a toothbrush, a toothpaste tube, a tractor, a space shuttle, you know, a chair. It's all the same to us. We want to figure out how to innovate by using our process, applying it.
Safety emerges early as an important issue.
22,000 child injuries a year, and so they're hospitalized injuries. I mean, there are many others.
And theft. It turns out a lot of carts are stolen.
Before moving on to the next step of the process, ask yourself, is the problem valid? And is it justifiable? Is the problem clearly defined? Are the criteria and constraints of the project clearly articulated? Is the problem well articulated in a design brief? If the answer to these questions is no, you need to spend more time defining the problem. If the answer is yes, then you're ready to move on to step 2. Step 2 is to generate concepts. During this step, the designer is trying to come up with as many potential solutions to the problem as possible. This means they must do 2 important things: research and brainstorm. Research is the systematic study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. What the designer wants to find out is, do solutions to the problem already exist? If so, what are the shortcomings of these solutions? What has already been tried, whether successful or not? And is there related technology used in other areas that could be adapted to solve this problem? Most people would start this step with a bit of web searching, or maybe with a trip to the library. Whenever possible, you should seek first-hand information about the problem. Try to find the experts who can help you discover exactly what you didn't know you didn't know. Let's see how the IDEO group handles the research portion of the shopping cart challenge.
The team splits into groups to find out firsthand what the people who use, make, and repair shopping carts really think.
Okay, go.
The problem with the plastic cart is the wind catches it. Yeah. And these things have been clocked at 35 across the parking lot.
Oh, man, that's actually a pretty good point.
The trick is to find these real experts, and so that you can learn much more quickly than you could by just kind of doing it the normal way and trying to learn about it yourself.
From everything I read, these things aren't that safe either, you know? So probably the seat itself is going to have to be redesigned.
One of the interesting things for me is looking at how people really don't like to let go of the cart, except for the professional shopper, whose strategy is to leave the cart at various places.
3:30 in the afternoon, and the group is back at IDEO. There is no let-up.
Each team is going to demonstrate and communicate and share everything that they've learned today.
After doing lots of extensive research, the next step would be to brainstorm. Brainstorming is a group technique for solving problems, generating ideas, and stimulating creative thinking by unrestrained, spontaneous participation in discussion. You've probably been part of a brainstorming session before, but you might never have been taught good techniques for a quality brainstorming session. There are some general brainstorming rules that everyone should follow. Capture all ideas. Sketch everything. Don't say something out loud without recording it. You may want to come back to it later. Allow all members to contribute. The more voices that can add ideas, the better, especially when the group is made up of people with many different backgrounds and perspectives. No criticism allowed. Brainstorming is the time to take risks and get all the ideas out there. Criticizing an idea at this stage can hurt the creative flow. Strive for quantity to allow the quality ideas to surface. You want to come up with the highest number of solutions possible. The bigger the pile of ideas, the more likely it is to include a great one. Welcome piling on. Use others' ideas as launch pads. This is why team brainstorming is more effective than individual brainstorming. You can build on each other's ideas, combine ideas, and use your team for inspiration. Allow a free-for-all, and encourage big thinking. Just because an idea seems impossible or a little weird doesn't mean it shouldn't be added and recorded. Very often those crazy ideas include a thread of something brilliant that ends up being useful. While you brainstorm, all group members should be creating thumbnail sketches to communicate their ideas. These are simple little drawings without much technical detail. There's an old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in design that's definitely true. Even when an idea is crystal clear inside your head, it's often difficult to communicate it to your design team by writing it down or making hand gestures in the air. If you can quickly and accurately make a sketch of your idea, everyone will know what you're trying to say, and it will be easier to build on this idea. The goal is to come up with as many concepts as possible within the allotted time frame. Let's take a look at a brainstorming session with the IDEO group. Notice how they follow the rules for brainstorming that were listed previously.
IDEO's mantra for innovation is written everywhere. One conversation at a time. Stay focused. Encourage wild ideas. Defer judgment. Build on the ideas of others.
That's the hardest thing for people to do, is to restrain themselves from criticizing an idea. So if anybody starts to nail an idea, they get the bell, you know.
The ideas pour out and are posted on the walls.
Oh, the blind, the privacy blind. Like, it doesn't nest, we don't have a solution.
Organized chaos. It's not organized. What it is it's focused chaos.
Vote with your Post-it, not with an idea that's cool, but with an idea that's cool and buildable. If it's too far out there and it can't be built in a day, then I don't think we should vote on it.
Once you have a big collection of ideas to choose from, it's time to select one. The problem with this is that people tend to get very attached to their own ideas. They also tend to get attached to their first ideas. It's extremely unlikely that someone's first idea is the best idea. In a good brainstorming session, ideas are constantly being enhanced, combined, altered, and improved on. Insisting that your first idea is the best just isn't usually right. The best concept is the one that best satisfies the criteria of the project that were outlined in the design brief back on step 1. To help your group select the best idea, you can use a tool called a decision matrix. A decision matrix is a chart like this one. Your different ideas are listed on the left side, and the important criteria for the project are listed across the top. Again, these criteria for success should have been defined way back in step 1. Each concept gets a score from 1 to 4 in each criteria, with 4 representing a good score and 1 representing a poor score. When the scores are totaled, it should be clear which concept will solve the problem the best. One way to break a tie is to decide which criteria is most important to the success of the project, then count that score twice. This can sometimes help decide between two tied ideas. Once an idea has been chosen, you're almost ready to move on to the next step. First, ask yourself these questions. Does the technology needed to build this solution exist? And do you have access to the resources needed to build this solution? Do you have the time, information, materials, the tools, energy, capital, and human resources needed to actually make this idea? If no, you might need to return to an earlier step in the process to redefine your problem or generate some new concepts. If the answer is yes, then you're ready to move on to step 3. We're off to a great start. In the next video, we'll dive into step 3 of the design process and find out how to turn this idea into a real plan ready for action.